Hey there, I'm Neil. My pronouns are he, him, and I'm the host of my new podcast, Pause and Rewind. I'll be chatting to changemakers, thought leaders, and role models who all share a common goal. They're striving to make the world a more inclusive place. And let's face it, we need it. Each guest has a unique story when it comes to doing their thing, and we often know who people are in the now. But how much do we really know about them? Pause and Rewind takes a moment to explore the experiences in my guest's life that led them to where and who they are now. Because everyone loves an origin story. We'll dive into tales, anecdotes, and what makes our guests tick. So, are you ready to pause and rewind? Hiya, and welcome to this episode of Pause and Rewind, where I am chatting to Marie-Helene Tyack. Marie-Helene leads inclusion, diversity and belonging for Allianz Commercial globally, and she's also the chair of the Allianz Global Pride Board. Marie-Helene is super passionate about DEI. It's always been at the heart of her career, and that passion shines through. Her work and her commitment to DEI is widely recognised, and it has done through various accolades and awards, most notably recently as head of diversity at the Diva Awards for this year. And her work is phenomenal, and I was really excited to find out more about Marie-Helene. We've got a lot of friends in common. It's always lovely to see her, but I wanted to know why she does this work. And we talk a lot through this podcast about her love of staff networks, our mutual love of staff networks and employee research groups, ERGs, and the importance that plays on our lives. We also talk about upbringing. Marie-Helene was born in Switzerland, and we talk about cultural shifts. And we talk about some really big topics. And I'm going to pop a trigger warning early in this episode. We do talk about Marie-Helene's experience with rape and being a survivor of abuse, and her healing journey in that. So please do take care of yourself whilst listening to this episode, and we will put some signposting to support services in the show notes, particularly for Gallup, who do amazing work in this area. We talk about representation and growing up as queer. So there's loads in this episode to take away from. Please enjoy it and let me know what you think. Cheers. Good morning, Marie-Helene, and welcome to Pause and Rewind.
Hi, Neil. Thank you for having me.
Thanks for being here. It's really good to see you. I don't think I've seen you since the Rainbow Honours at the Natural History Museum.
I know.
What
And
a
that was a
gorgeous
very
night
nice,
that was.
it was, wasn't it? It was so
It was
nice.
lovely. It was great to see the museum in a totally different light.
I love that place. And the way they use it for the awards is so cool. It's really
It's
nice.
so cool. It's such a gorgeous evening. And obviously so many wonderful people in one room. And it was amazing to see our mutual friend Jude win, obviously.
Absolutely. Oh, I cried like a baby.
Same, same, same. I'm going to start off with a big question that I put to all my guests. What does the world look like for Marie-Helene Tyack right now?
Right now, it's looking pretty good. It's looking pretty good. I've come off a brilliant week last week at the Paralympics in Paris. So we were sponsoring Pride House for the Olympics and Paralympics, and I got my team together. We came to volunteer for a few days, and it was just the most amazing experience. So totally on a complete high from that experience from last week. And then we came together and we kind of shaped our strategy for next year. So giving us loads of energy, and the fact of being together as a team, we had people come from India, from the US, from Singapore, was just amazing. So yeah, completely on a high from that, and sort of trying to keep that going as long as I can.
Well, hey, riding those waves, what was the vibe like at the Paralympics? I mean, it always just looks so joyful and inspirational and just phenomenal.
Yeah, I mean, it was brilliant. So we were Pride House is just to explain what it is. So each delegation has like a house. There was Team GB House, and Pride House is that for LGBTQ plus athletes. And I work for Allianz, and Allianz were one of the main sponsors of the Olympics and Paralympics. And I thought, we have to do this. We have to sponsor Pride House. So this was it was a labor of love that took me like over a year to get into place, but I really, really, really wanted to do this. And basically, they use it as a space to create awareness on inclusion in sport, but specifically LGBTQ plus inclusion in sport. So we were running quizzes, so speaking to people, from all over the world who honestly probably just wanted to sit down, but they sat down and we did the quiz with them, and they learned lots of different things. And we were hosting kind of inclusive sports spaces, so having people who were disabled come and join, loads of kids, and it was just such an amazing experience. And we had also some Paralympian, like medal winning Paralympians come to say hello, and it was just really cool, and the vibe was brilliant. The vibe was really, really cool.
That sounds amazing, and great that Alliance is able to get behind and massive initiatives like that. And you always do, actually, as a company, you always get behind pride events and generally kind of intersectional celebrations and stuff. That must bring you so much joy as a person.
Absolutely. I mean, I bully a lot of people, and it gets it
Hey, it gets it
and
done.
it gets it done. But it's important for me to do these things. So yeah, and it does. It gives me great joy and great pride to see them, come off. So yeah, for sure.
And we're obviously off the back, just off the back of Pride season. How was your Pride season?
Pride season was good. It was very busy, as
Always.
always. And so I have a day job and a gay job, and my gay job is I oversee all the Pride networks within the Allianz Group, and a couple of networks launched during Pride Month. So I was involved in that, which is really cool. And being asked to take part in panel discussions and stuff. And coming to London and marching with Diva, I hadn't done this in years. I think the last time I marched in Pride was in like 1996 or 1997, something like that. So it was really cool, and it was such a lovely day, and being, with friends and seeing friends talk on stages. Marty was talking on the Soho stage, and it was just so cool to be able to, be there and celebrate with them. So yeah, it was very cool.
It looked like a gorgeous day. I actually missed it because I was in Barcelona for work, but it looked gorgeous, and you had such an all-star lineup of people marching with
It was
Diva.
amazing.
I
Yeah.
mean, always Diva is Diva, right? Like so much, everyone loves Diva. They're phenomenal. Um, you said you set up a couple of networks, and I just don't want to sell you short here. How many networks are you responsible for setting up?
So today we have 28 networks throughout the
That's
world,
phenomenal.
which is, yeah, it's pretty cool. And we have, and I can talk about this because we communicate about this externally, but we have a target of reaching 80% of the Allianz population to have access to a Pride network. And we're currently on like 79.14 or something. So we're going to
Way!
get there. We're going to get there by the end of the year, which is really cool. And, you know, for me, my gay job brings me so much joy. And I think, working for ERGs is really important. And I think
Hmm.
LGBTQ plus ERGs in particular have a role in terms of duty of care for our LGBTQ plus colleagues that maybe other networks don't have. So for me, it's not just about organizing, pride marches and, getting drag queens coming to do drag queen bingo. I think there's a real sense of creating safe spaces for our
Yeah.
colleagues. And that's really, really important. And we set up this year within those networks an exclusively trans and non-binary group. And I was there, and I'm not involved. I was there for the first call just to say, this is your baby, you do with it what you want. And I'll always remember this, that there was a person, we were going around the room, virtual room, introducing ourselves and giving our pronouns. And we got to this one person who gave their pronouns as they, them, and then they started to cry. And I reached out to them afterwards, just to check that, they were okay. And they said to me, that's the first time I've ever said my pronouns out
Um,
loud.
that's gorgeous.
Isn't that amazing to be
Yeah.
able to, they will remember that for the rest of their lives.
And so will the people, other people in that
Mm,
room.
yeah. And to think that they did that at work,
Yeah.
you wouldn't, I mean, it's just amazing. It really is amazing. And I was, I had There was quite a lot of backlash when I announced this, not internally, I hasten to add,
Mm.
but externally. And I'm so pleased that we've done this because even just for that, it was worth it.
That's amazing. I can hear the passion. I know the passion. You know, you are I mean your bio, diversity, equity, inclusion have always been at the heart of Marie-Helene's career, right? So I know your passion. I know how strong it is. I think people underestimate the power and importance of ERGs.
Mm,
And when we're constantly talking about budget cuts in DEI and provision and oh DEI is dying. I think that people lose sight of how important those spaces are. Like my voice in inclusion comes from being an events manager at a university and starting to get involved in
mm.
ERGs, started to get involved loosely with our LGBT network, and then started to support the other networks. And then I was chair of my network and then organized collaborations. And so I wouldn't be doing what I'm doing now. This podcast wouldn't exist. I wouldn't be at my journey of understanding and awareness without the role of ERGs and them
Oh,
existing.
absolutely. And I'm completely the same. So I I've been doing my day job. So I joined Allianz 8 years ago.
Mm,
And I've the minute I joined, I thought I'm not going to lie about who I am. So I was very open about
yeah,
who I was. And I said I want to get involved in DEI. And I was told at that time, well, DEI is just gender and binary gender, by the way, of
yeah, of
course.
course.
So basically women. I'm like, okay, well, I think there's probably a lot more to work on, but fine, I'll go with it. And then I saw there was a Pride network in the UK that had been set up. It was one of the first ones, and I thought, okay, fine, I'll join the Pride network. And then through that, through doing work with the ERG, I then got nominated to join the Global Pride Board, so that oversees the networks. And then a couple of years or a year after that, I was named its chair. And I wouldn't be doing what I do today if it weren't for that. I wouldn't be doing my day job if it weren't for my ERG work. So absolutely. I mean, it's so important, so important.
We talk a lot about day jobs and gay jobs, right? Mine's permanently a gay job when we create
I want
space,
that.
which I love. And how easy is it for you now to separate your day job and your gay job? Like, obviously, in terms of kind of like logistics and operations, yes, you have to. But there comes a point, and this has come up quite, it's a common theme here, is that how are you able to separate them? Because I really can't.
Mm. It's an interesting question. If you ask my manager, I don't. Um, but I don't think that's fair because my day job is about inclusion for everyone, and it's
Yeah,
making our organization more inclusive for
for
everyone.
sure.
Um, so I can use my lived experience to talk about what it's like to, be discriminated against because of your identity and make that applicable to other identities.
For sure.
And that's what I try and do. And I think a lot of the stuff that I've worked on as well, um, it is about the greater good for everyone. It's not just the LGBTQ plus community. And of course, I have, because it's my identity, is what I know. So of course, I have more investment in that because it's me.
Yeah.
But I try and be, I have to, I have to
Yeah.
try and separate the two because otherwise I wouldn't be doing a good job.
No, and you are doing, I mean, you're doing a phenomenal job. I mean, and I've seen your accolades and Pride Power List 23, 24, Diversity List 23, Inspirational Role Model at Rainbow Honors 23, and Head of Diversity at Diva 24. I know you're not in it for that, those accolades,
No.
but they must feel really bloody nice to feel recognized for the incredible work you're doing.
Oh, for sure. And the one that was the most incredible was the inspirational role model
Yeah.
because and I know people always say this when they accept speeches, but I really wasn't expecting it at all. I mean, the shortlist was just amazing, and who am I? And then to have that recognition for being a role model in front of a room full of people who I consider my own role models,
Yeah.
it was just incredible. And I never in a million years thought I would be in that space ever. And it was just, yeah, just the most incredible moment. And, you know, we don't do it for the accolades. But to have the recognition is important. And I think, you know, I'm lucky I get the recognition at work. But to have that externally, I think also helps in my message within the organization to say, well, listen, you know, I kind of know what I'm talking about,
Yeah,
so
I'm
listen
award
to
winning.
me.
Listen to
Yeah.
me. I
It
love
doesn't
that.
always work, but you know, I try.
Push it. Um, Marie-Helene, I am so excited to dive into your origin story. I feel like I know very much about who you are now, but I'm really excited to know more about you. So, are you ready to pause and rewind?
Absolutely.
Let's do this. Take me back. Tell me all about little Marie-Helene.
So, and I've been thinking a lot about this, preparing for this. So, I was born in Switzerland to an English father and a French mother. I'm the eldest of three, so my sister was born kind of 18 months. I know that's mathematically that doesn't work, but anyway, about a couple of years after me, and then my brother a fair bit afterwards. And my sister and I have always been, you know, thick as thieves, and I really had the most idyllic childhood. It was like Heidi. I was Heidi, minus the pigtails, but I was Heidi. My parents were both teachers in an international school, so they were teachers and house parents. So we kind of grew up surrounded by elder sisters, you know. Um, and in the winter we'd be skiing, in the summer we'd be hiking in the mountains, and it was just, yeah, just an idyllic childhood. And I couldn't think of a better childhood. Um, it was just amazing. And it kind of that it stopped, I think, when we moved to the UK. So we moved to the UK when I was 10.
Mhm.
And I feel like I lost my innocence then.
Okay, that'll do it.
Yeah. And because arriving in a country where, I mean, I always spoke English to my father, but my English wasn't great then. And I spoke French to my brother and sister. So I mean, I was never bullied, but being teased at school because I sounded different,
Mm.
having to change the way I wrote. So
Okay.
I was basically I had to learn how to write again because, you know, in France, in Switzerland, the way of writing is a lot more curly and a lot more cursive, I think is the word that we're looking for.
Cursive is the word. Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah.
So I was taught to write again age 10, and I kind of felt like you know, I had my personality whacked out of me by then. And sort of linguistically as well. My sister I don't remember this, but apparently my sister said to me, we have to stop talking to each other in French at school because, you know, we're just being teased about it and I don't want to be teased anymore. I'm like, okay, it's going to feel really weird, but okay, we'll talk English to each other. So we changed and we stopped talking in French to my brother and we were talking in English to each other. And for my mother, this was awful. She felt like she was losing her children
Yeah.
because we suddenly, and she said it was an almost overnight thing, that we suddenly stopped talking in French to each other, started speaking in English to each other, and kind of were embracing a culture that she didn't know or didn't understand. So that was, yeah, the beginning of the loss of innocence, I think. I mean, it wasn't, you know, in any way a traumatic experience, but it was certainly kind of a shift in my childhood for sure when we moved.
Absolutely. I mean, it's everything that you know. It's a massive culture shift, but also that sense of kind of almost displacement within your family of kind of like everything that you had known suddenly, I just like you said, disappearing overnight.
Yeah. And, you know, from a school perspective, so we were in an international school
Mm.
that was hugely diverse in terms of, you know, nationality of people in the classroom. You know, my best friend was Spanish, hardly spoke French, lots of different people, and being almost, it was normal to have people in your classroom that didn't have the same color skin as you, and people who were amazed the first time that they saw snow because they'd never seen snow before because they lived in Saudi Arabia. To move from that to an all-girls school in the middle of nowhere in Somerset, where you had to wear a brown uniform. I mean, come on, it was just
Yeah,
a challenge.
I can imagine. I can imagine. Have you revisited those conversations with your family now to talk about those
Yeah,
times?
I did. I have just recently, just preparing for this. And my mother was still quite emotional when she was talking
Yeah.
about it. Because today we still, with my brother and sister, we still talk English to each other. We never
Okay.
changed back to speaking French. Um, and yeah, my mother was quite emotional about it still. And it was because I think we don't realize these things. Obviously, we don't think about the impact that it's going to have, when you're 10, 11. Of course, you're in your own little world and you're not going to think about that. But yeah, it just made me appreciate her, I think, for what she did and the sacrifice she made for us.
Mm,
Um, I mean, they're okay now. They're back in the south of France. They retired there
lovely.
many years ago.
Yeah.
But for her, it was a sacrifice, and I appreciate, of course, this sacrifice that she did for us. And
Yeah.
yeah.
We don't always think about the
Mm,
impact that our growing up and changing when those first um areas of autonomy, right, start to come through, the impact that they have on our parents.
yeah, yeah,
Yeah,
and but anyway, yeah, it was an interesting shift, I guess.
can imagine. What are some of your favorite anecdotes you've heard about yourself growing up?
Um, so my mother said to me, she said, when you were when you were a kid, you were always so happy, always kind of even-tempered. And she said, we wondered if there was something wrong with you because it was nothing seemed to faze you, and it was just, yeah, you were always happy. She said they were concerned because they're like, what is wrong with this child? She always seems so happy. But she said, obviously, it's part of your personality because that's, how you are today.
Yeah.
But at the time, yeah, they were concerned that there might be something wrong with me because I was always so happy. So that made me chuckle.
That is brilliant. And you are such a happy, joyful person. I mean, I know life is rough sometimes, right? But you do radiate like such warmth and kind of like welcoming and positivity.
Oh, thank you.
No,
It's my mother, and well, it's my genes. My mother and my father, I'm sure, have something to do with this.
that's such a gorgeous anecdote. So I guess school starting in the UK must have been a massive culture
Mm,
shift. It really frustrates me the lack of appreciation in England for other languages and other cultures. Still in 2024, I mean, look at what's happened recently. Like it's, with the unrest and racist riots and
mm.
all all a response to kind of like being unwelcoming of anything different. Um, anyway, that is another podcast. What were you before that? What were you like at school?
Um, and I think that, I mean, it carried on even when we were in the UK, that I was yeah, I was always, studious. I was always kind of top of the class, really bad at maths, still am. Somebody somewhere thought it sensible to make me in charge of a budget. That's no comment. But yeah, I was always very studious. I always had a lot of friends. And to this day, I have friends that I made when I just arrived in the UK. So it was, school for me was a happy time. It was really a happy time for me because I was, I like to be kind of intellectually stimulated and to have these wonderful kind of personal connections. And um, I was always, and this is something else another anecdote. My mother was like, and you were always looking out for people who weren't included. You were
Okay.
always looking out for, the sort of the downtrodden, and making sure that they were okay. And I thought, oh, okay, there must be something in this.
That must have been so interesting to hear when having those
Yeah.
conversations recently, like looking back and almost shaping already at such a young age, like preparing yourself for what you're doing now. What was the goal when you were at school? What did you want to be when you grew up?
I wanted to be a private detective. I had the book,
I
I
love that.
had everything. I wanted to be a private detective. That
Does
was
that
it.
still does those ambitions still seep through now?
I am so good at stalking people on Instagram.
Ah, I love that.
But yeah, that was it. Private detective.
And that's brilliant. My husband is the same. If I want to know anything about someone, I'm like, Loz, can you sort this out? And he's a whiz.
You'll have a second source now. You can come to me, Neil.
Amazing. Right, cool. Loz, you're fired. Um, what about teenage years? For many of us, really formative for all of us, really
Mm.
formative time, changes in our bodies, first heartbreaks for us queer people, realizations about who we are, coming out. What does teenage Marie-Helene look and feel like?
Oh, it was difficult. It was
Mm,
really difficult. I was completely in love with my best friend.
okay.
I obviously I didn't have the vocabulary to tell her at the time, and I didn't have the vocabulary either to put a word on what I was feeling. And we're talking here, late 80s, early 90s. So we had absolutely no representation. Peak Section 28. So, I even having your identity ignored at school and not talked about kind of consolidated this feeling of otherness and this feeling of shame. Um, and trying to sort of navigate all of that um, alone um, was really difficult. It was really difficult. I never ever spoke to anyone about what was going on inside my little head. I never had a point of reference, so I couldn't, describe what was going on. And it was really difficult. And I think I how can I put this? Until I was about 18 or 19, um, there was this, and we all carry, and thank you, Margaret Thatcher, but we all carry this kind of internalized homophobia with us because of Section 28 and because of how, it was the AIDS epidemic, and it was all of these other things that were going on that sort of made you feel even more ashamed of your identity. And I talk about this often. For me, what changed was Brookside.
Okay.
So,
I love this. I was such a fan as a kid.
oh, so I mean, you must remember the Beth Margaret storyline.
Beth Margaret, Anna, I
Yeah.
mean Anna Frill is
Oh,
like still hot to this day.
yes. Um, and actually, well, anyway, let me tell you my story, then I'll
Go
I'll
for it.
I'll, I'll tell you another story. And seeing for the first time somebody on screen,
Mm.
two women who were more or less my age, going through what I was going through was just a revelation for me.
Yeah.
It was like, okay, phew, I am not the only person in the world going through this, because at the time I really felt that I was. It was me and Martina Navratilova, and I think that was, we were the only two lesbians in the world. Um, and it was just the biggest source of comfort to be able to see that storyline. And Nicola Stevenson, who played Margaret, was at the Diva Awards this year, and I was able to say this to her. And I said, it was just, again, like 18-year-old me would not have dreamt a second to be able to do that, but to say to her, thank you, it
That's
changed my life.
amazing.
Mm.
And she was at the awards.
Yeah, she was at the awards. It was so cool. It
So
was so
she got
cool.
so she got to see you win an award as well.
Yes. Well, I mean, she didn't know who, I mean, she doesn't
No,
know
but
who I
still,
am, but
but still.
still. And for me to be able to say to her, that storyline changed my life. It
Yeah.
absolutely changed my life. So yeah, never underestimate the power of representation. And today, I think I'm a little jealous of the youth of today that are coming up that have all this
Yes.
amazing representation. Um, and I was talking about this with my wife, actually. We went to a concert on whenever it was this week, Girl in Red, right? Who's this lesbian singer. And the average age must have been about 17. We kind of both kind of made it crashing down. But hey, and just walking away from that thinking, wow, they're so lucky. How I would have wanted aged, I don't know, 13, 14 to hear somebody
Mm.
talk about how they met their girlfriend or talk about, you know, the feelings that they're having for other women without it being tinted in shame or anything like that, like the most natural thing in the world. I it was shame to say, yeah, I'm jealous of them because I never had that.
No, I don't think it is I don't think it's abnormal for people around our, I mean I'm 42 this year. And similarly to me, I remember the Brookside storyline, absolutely loved it. Remember a couple of EastEnders storylines, but then all I really had was kind of like Queer as Folk and This Life.
Mm.
I don't know if you remember BBC
Yes.
Two's This
Oh,
Life.
yes.
I mean, that was
Yes.
a real sexual awakening for me,
Yes.
that series. But that feeling of jealousy and resentment actually came up for me when I was watching Heartstoppers.
Mm,
And I thought, why am I not enjoying this? I thought
mm.
this is mushy shit. I don't like it. It's making me feel uncomfortable. And I realized that it was resentment.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. That's it.
Now, I've having watched a couple of series, I love it. And I love the joyful representation because the Beth and Margaret storyline and the Queer as Folk stuff, it was all quite dark.
Oh, of
There
course.
wasn't, it was
Yeah.
wasn't littered with the joy you see in a lot of queer representation now.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think I kind of my inner activist is also, well, and they don't know what we had to go
Yeah.
through.
Yeah.
I know what came before me. I know whose shoulders I'm standing on. They have no idea. And then I realized that I sound like a real grump. But it's important, and I think that we need to um, talk about this, and we need to talk about things like Section 28 and um, oh, what was the I've forgotten. Oh my goodness me, my brain has gone. The series about AIDS that came last year.
Oh, it is a sim.
It's the same, thank you. Um, when they talked about Section 28, that scene in the library when he's asked to remove all these things. I'm sure people watching this and fiction. No, it
Not at all.
actually happened. It actually happened. So yeah, I think my way of making peace with this, with my jealousy and my resentment is okay. I'm sharing your joy and it's great, but I think you need to be aware to kind of justify this joy. You need to be aware of what's come before you.
Yeah, I think it's important for all of us to know our history, right?
Mm,
And actually, I mean, intergenerational learning is so important
for sure.
because you still went to that concert surrounded by 17-year-olds and
Yeah.
soaked up that joy. And yes, there might
Mm,
have been a little bit of like, I wish I'd had this, but actually, you were still there. You were still there supporting a queer artist and stuff like that. And it's amazing to see that representation. But we all need to tap into that realization and knowing our history and what's
yeah.
come before us because it's how we fight the fight moving forward, right?
Thank you for not making me look like a grump.
Not at all. You don't sound like a grump at all. I'm totally with you on the feelings of jealousy and slight resentment, but I think it's good to talk about them because I know that we're not the only ones who had that when we watched things like Heartstoppers and things like Sex Education. I love them now, but it was just that initial
It
kind of
is.
like, yeah,
The joy is good.
the joy is good. As a teenager, then, what was your kind of sense of self of the world when you looked around you and you thought, this is who I am? I'm unable to communicate this with people. What did you think of the world at that time? Because I know for me, I was being bullied, um, didn't really understand it, and I just thought everything was really, really unfair.
Um, I think, yeah, that there was part of that. A lot of it was I pretended to be somebody else for many years. Um, and that's kind of how I got through it is by having boyfriends and, this
Yeah.
facade of normality in inverted brackets. But I think for me that there was a shift. So when I was 18, we had a bad car accident. And I kind of had to face my own mortality when I was 18, my own mortality, my own kind of also capacity to walk, and this, you know, happened a couple of times because of knock on from the injuries. And I think that kind of made me get older a lot faster. And this sense of injustice in the world at that time was very, very strong. And somebody, I remember somebody said to me at that time, you must have done something to anger God to have the
Oh,
accident. And I, of course, thought, oh, it's because I'm gay. He knows I'm gay. And it was just the most, I mean, it was a teacher, by the way, so the most awful thing to
oh,
say to a
wow.
student. I mean, she was a little bit crazy, but I think this sense of injustice was really like confounded by what happened. Um, and you grow old a lot more, you become a lot more cynical. And then I think that the next chapter in my life is not a happy one. And it's, yeah, it's not a happy one, but it's a really important one in my story, because I met my first girlfriend through Diva. But and quick trigger warning here on abuse and rape, but she turned out to be an absolutely awful person. You know, I was in an abusive relationship with her, and she raped me. And I was, you know, the way that I was treated by the police, by solicitors, were awful. And this resulted in even more kind of internalized homophobia that went on for many, many years, back in the closet. If, you know, this is what being gay is about, I don't want to be any part of this, and I just want to just pretend to be something that I'm not, because it's just too difficult. It's just too difficult. And I was still, I wasn't out to anyone at that time, really. Certainly not to my parents or my family. So I lived this whole thing again alone. And it was really difficult. It was really, really, really tough few years. Um, and yeah, it was just a continuation of this chapter. I mean, it came to an end, and you know that there was some positive that came out afterwards. But that particular chapter, I think, in my story is really difficult. And
Mm.
um, I talk about it quite easily now, but for, I don't know, 25 years, I kept it under my hat and never talked about it to anyone. And I've literally just started talking about it in the last couple of years. Again, in an effort to create awareness around domestic abuse and LGBTQ plus relationships, to create awareness of the fact that, you know, abuse has many shapes and forms, and that people shouldn't be ashamed, and people, you know, it is important to talk about it.
It is important. Thank you so much for sharing, and for being so vulnerable, about it. What has your healing journey looked like?
Um, to be very honest,
Hmm.
I pushed it down for many years and just didn't deal with it at all. Um, I've the only so this person wrote me a letter after it happened, um, to apologize and to say, you know, that I can't remember what excuse she used, but you
Mm.
know, but she used the word rape in her letter.
Okay.
And I held on to this letter for so many years. Um, I don't know why. I don't know why. And recently it was at my parents' place. My parents still don't know that this happened. And I was at my parents' place emptying a box full of my stuff, and I found this letter, and I read it, and I threw it away. And for
Okay.
me, that was the beginning of, you know, I don't need to hold on to this anymore. And then my healing journey's been talking about it, writing about it. I went to see a therapist as well, probably 25 years too late, but I went to see a therapist. And it's just and it's still an ongoing process. And I'm lucky that I have, I've been able to talk about it with my sister, and people around me who I've known for years didn't know that this had happened. People who I was friends with at the time didn't know that it happened. So to be able to share with them, has been incredibly healing. And yeah, it just talking about it, and if I can use my experience to change somebody's perception of abuse, if I can use my experience to help someone, then it's worth it.
Again, thank you so much for sharing, and the way that you are using that experience is no surprise to me with who you are and the person we know and love. Thank you. If anyone else has been through a similar situation, if they have had a historical incident that they feel, oh, it's too late, or that doesn't matter, it happened so long ago, you sought therapy 25 years afterwards, what would you say to them?
There's no time limit on healing. It's and I don't, to be honest, I don't know why all of a sudden I felt like I needed to talk about it, why
Yeah,
it had to come out, but it did. It did
yeah,
when it did, and I didn't fight it. And I didn't fight it because today I'm in a place where I am happier than I've ever been. I'm comfortable in my own skin. I know exactly what I'm doing, who I am. Um, and so I've got I guess, the foundations to be able to deal with it that maybe I didn't have. I mean, I certainly didn't have 25 years ago. So, you know, healing takes the time it needs, but there's no time limit on it, and don't fight it. If it's coming up now, many years afterwards, then there's a reason for it. And
yeah,
it's a little bit cuckoo, but I really believe in things happening for a reason. And that this came up when it did, because that was the time that I needed to
yeah,
deal with it.
yeah. But the way that trauma and these historical incidents manifest in everyday life, we never know how much they're really affecting us until they're there. But
Mm,
they can be affecting us in the background for a lot longer than the sudden the way they arise.
yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. Mm.
Thank you. I will put some signposting to services in the show notes for anyone who's listening. If you do need to take a break from listening, please do take care of yourself, and check out the show notes. Um, Career wise, let's jump into your career. So what was your what does career look like, and what was the first early signs of moving into what you're doing now?
So I never made it to be a private detective, which I'm very disappointed about. The book didn't help. I I did a degree in modern languages, which doesn't help either because you're not qualified to do anything. And I really, and I think early signs of what I'm doing today is I've always had, an open mind to different cultures, different people, different languages. And I've lived all over the world. I lived in Spain, I lived in Brussels, I lived in Malaysia. So that kind of was going on in the background. I worked in recruitment for about 400 years, and literally I fell in it, like most people do. And it was never ever, a lifelong passion to recruit people. But having said that, I always used it to talk about diversity because it was important that
Mm,
when you were recruiting people into the organization, to bear in mind that actually, you want to have a diverse workforce. You want to have as many different ways of thinking in a team. So that was kind of involved in what I was doing. And like we said earlier, sort of my gay job kind of took off, and I was able to get into the DEI space through my gay job. This opportunity came up, and yeah, I've been doing this job now for, I don't know, yeah, 2.5 years, and loving it. Like I said, I don't know if I'd been able to do this, 10 years ago, because a lot of what I do is self-driven.
Yep.
A lot of what I do is, liaising with, senior stakeholders, trying to influence them without necessarily having the authority to do so. And you can't do that if you don't have the self-confidence and the self-belief that as a 30-year-old. Having said that, and I'm going to sound like an old fart, I think 30-year-olds today probably do, but 30-year-old me certainly didn't.
Same.
So it's been a really great journey. It's been a really great journey, and there's one person who was absolutely pivotal in this journey, and she was a lady who I'd recruited for quite a lot. So she was based in London. She was somebody important in our London office, and she knew how passionate I was about diversity, and she always said to me, "You need to do something else. You need to do something other than recruitment." And she was asked to deliver a speech at a DEI event, and she asked me to write her speech, completely based on, I don't know, trust, on because I'd never done anything like this before. She just said, "Yeah, can you write me the speech?" And I did. And for me, this really opened up a way of thinking, and to think, okay, actually, you know what? There is kind of legs to this, that there is an opportunity to do more with this. So I kind of gradually got involved in more DEI stuff through that. But she was absolutely pivotal in that process.
You've answered two of my questions, which are
Sorry.
like, no, not at all, not at all, because you've answered so much beautifully than I can ask them, which is, how did you find your destination inclusion? And tell me about someone who shaped you the most along the way. But sometimes all it is that one
Mm.
person. I sound a bit like Lady Gaga when she was on tour with A Star Is Born, right? When she was talking about Bradley Cooper. And all it takes, you could be in a room full of 100 people and it only takes one person. But it is so true, right? Because my big breaking events was because one person took a chance on me and created a role for me. And you have the power to just shape someone's whole destiny
Yeah,
with just a little bit of faith and belief in them.
yeah. And to be fair, she did that. There was my first boss when I came to France was also really important, because she made me see my potential,
Yeah.
because and kind of created this want to do something else. It wasn't DI then, it was just something else. So I think having a combination of those two people was absolutely pivotal. But this woman who asked me to write the speech, she became my mentor, and we've become friends, and the relationship has shifted because she wanted my advice on somebody in her team who'd just come out, and I just thought that was just so beautiful and such a lovely kind of
Full circle moment, maybe.
yeah, exactly, that's what it
Yeah.
was. Yeah.
Yeah. What's her name?
Tracy, her name is
Big up
Tracy.
Tracy, big up
Yeah.
Tracy. My version of Tracy is Shonali, and she's still in my life now. And like, it's again the relationship has shifted, and yeah, it's beautiful when you're able to maintain those relationships. Um,
Absolutely.
what lessons have you learned along the way?
Oh wow, so much, so much. um One that I'm trying to work on constantly is don't take things personally.
Okay.
And I think when you work so hard at whatever it is, if it's implementing a policy, if it's organizing an event, and three people turn up to your event, or somebody doesn't like the wording of the policy, it's not you. And so this is something that I'm working really hard on. I'm Pisces, so obviously I'm going to take everything super personally, super emotionally. But I'm working hard on that, and that's been a lesson that I've learned, is not to take things personally.
I hear you. That absolutely resonates with me, particularly as an events manager when people don't show up.
Yes.
Does happiness and success look and feel how you thought it would?
I never thought I would be this happy and this fulfilled, um, professionally and personally. So this is beyond all my expectations in terms of what it looks or feels like, because I just never thought I would get to this. And it's, you know, like I'm 48. I think it's about bloody time that I found this time, this space, but also aware that a lot of people go through life and not to have that. So it's just beyond any expectation, and the success I've had at work, the recognition I've had externally, all of these things are just, I never in a million years expected them. So it's beyond all expectations.
I hope you're also able to acknowledge how much you deserve them all.
Oh, thank you.
Final question for this segment. Looking back, what are you most proud of to date?
I'm most proud of sticking with it and just getting on with it. And I think going back to one of your very first questions about, the story about my mother thinking that I was there was something wrong with me because I was always happy. But I've constantly remained true to myself and stuck with it while remaining true to myself. And that is what I'm most proud of. I don't feel like I've changed. I think that if you ask people who've known me since I was 10, they'd say I was still the same person.
The House of Happiness is London's ultimate sober clubbing extravaganza. We're led and delivered but created for all, whether teetotal, sober curious, or just taking a booze snooze. We love a day rave, and on a Saturday afternoon you can expect banging house tunes, DJs on decks, dancers on podiums, and a fully stocked alcohol-free bar. Flamboyant, bold, with a glitter station to boot. We're all about safe, inclusive fun, and we even have a pre-meet so that you can make new sober buddies before you hit the dance floor. Grab your tickets from Instagram now at House of Happiness Official, and we'll see you on the dance floor. Are you ready for some quickfire questions?
Yes.
What album, book, or movie, you can answer all of them if you like, has had a lasting impact on you?
So the book The Hours, which was then made into a film. So this is my go-to. I read it or I watch it at least once a year. And just there are so many different layers. And I love Virginia Woolf. I mean, going back to my coming out story, reading Virginia Woolf and Martina Navratilovan's biography was like, that was it. This was my exposure to queer education. But so I have a soft spot for Virginia Woolf. Mrs. Dalloway is my favorite book, and to have all these amazing, as it turns out, queer women in this story and the different layers, it's just beautiful, absolutely beautiful.
I love that. Do you have an album as well?
Anything by Skunk Anansie.
Oh, love that.
I love Skunk Anansie. I seen them live several times, and got kicked by Skin once when she was in the what do you call it, mosh pit. So yeah, I love it, absolutely love it.
Weak is my favorite Skunk Anansie song.
Oh yes,
it's so raw and emotional, right?
It's brilliant.
Yeah. What's a saying you live by and a saying that you'd put in the bin?
So it is what it is. I use often. And I don't mean that in a fatalistic kind of way.
So you'd that's the saying you live by?
Yeah.
Oh,
yes.
So mine is I'd put that in the bin.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Because I use it. Again, it's not a fatalistic way, but it's like we need to pick our battles.
Okay.
And
that's a different way of looking at it.
Yeah.
I love that.
And I believe in destiny and fate and whatever, and that if stuff happens it happens for a reason, and sometimes there's no point fighting it.
Okay.
And I use it with my sister all the time. And one I put in the bin is if you know, you know, but like the shorthand version, like stop fucking using it. Stop sharing something in public, and if you know, you know. If it's going to stay private, then keep it private.
that one's firmly in the bin. I can hear that. What has been the best adventure of your life so far?
Well, my life has been an adventure, and it's difficult to pick one thing. Um, for example, living in Malaysia was an amazing adventure. But yeah, life is an adventure, and I think that I hope it carries on like this for a long time.
It definitely will. What three words would you use to describe you and your origin story?
I'm going to cheat a little bit. So passionate, determined, little Miss Happy.
Do you like the Little Miss books?
I do, and I was given when I was in school in Switzerland, so I must have been, I don't know, 6 or 7. We had we were all given a Little Miss book that corresponded, Mr. Man, that corresponded to who you were, and I was given Little Miss Happy. So yeah, this is this is my go. That should be my go-to book.
Gorgeous, gorgeous. Let's fast forward a bit. What exciting things do you have coming up?
So I have I sit on a lot of different boards of LGBTQ plus charities, and there's some really cool things coming up with them in the next few months. So that I'm really looking forward to that. I am going on holiday to Vietnam, which has been always on my like bucket list. And coming to London in the next couple of weeks. So yeah, lots of amazing things, and we're doing some cool things at work as well. So lots of positive, exciting things to come. And it's been difficult. The first, as you know, coming back from a very long summer break, I had a tough couple of weeks sort of getting back into the swing of
Mm,
things.
me too.
But I don't know why. I really don't know why. And I think, it, because what I do, you have to be self-driven, and I'm all about having amazing ideas, but I need to tell them to someone. So I was just telling them to my dog, and the reception wasn't great. Um, so yeah, and then it's now, yeah, I'm now back in the swing of things, and lots of energy and cool things looking for the end of the year.
It can take a while to get kick-started again after a break, right? I definitely felt it after my month off.
I don't usually, and I don't know why this, and I think I've analysed it, but it was weird because I don't usually.
I'm going to throw a question out here because, like so many guests on Pause and Rewind, you wear a lot of different hats. How do you look after yourself? What does self-care look like?
Self-care is spending time at home with my wife and our dog, and just feeling safe in a cocoon. And I think that having this cocoon of love is really important, and
Oh,
it's and I can really kind of just thinking about it, and it's just feeling that it's there, and this feeling of kind of, well, obviously there's the physical hug from both, but it kind of, it's a metaphorical hug, and I can just feel
yeah.
all of getting back in, and the pressure coming down. So that for me is really important.
I love that cocoon of love. And what's your wife's name?
Lila,
Leela. And what's your dog's name and what dog do you have?
Teddy, and he's a pom.
He's a pom. I love
Yes.
poms. I love poms. I have a pug called Pugsley. Um, what brings you joy? And I can obviously hear that your cocoon of love does.
My cocoon of love does. Um, and making a difference to people at work. And it's not off it's not often people tell you these things, but when you have feedback on something that you've done, a policy that you've put in place that's allowed, I don't know, a woman with menopause to be able to have a conversation with her manager, or if it's transitioning at work, that means that somebody can use one of our unisex toilets or whatever it is. Having that feedback, knowing that what I'm doing has an impact on other people and a positive impact on other people, that gives me huge amounts of joy.
It does make it so worth it, doesn't it, when you start to see your efforts have a direct impact. A former colleague of mine said that because of the events that I'd been organizing around the menopause, she didn't feel that coming to work, menopause was something that she had to worry about as a result of some of the policies, the events, the conversations that were taking place. And that definitely spurs me on to
Mm,
carry on.
yeah. absolutely. And it people are quick to criticize
Mm.
and less quick to come back and I mean, when I first started talking about the menopause, I had women come to me to say, why are we talking about this at work?
Right.
Okay, well, you don't have to, but
Yeah.
there are women that actually probably might want to. So, tough tits. I'm not doing this for you. I'm doing it for
Yeah, you're doing
them.
it for the people. That's the thing. If something's not for you, it's not for you. Someone complained that we got menopause added as an absentee option on
Mm.
their on sick forms.
Oh, this is
Um
my
and,
next battle.
and complained about that. And it was like, well, if you don't need it, it's not for you. You don't have to put it.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Mm.
Not everything is for you. What practical takeaways do you have for anyone listening wanting to carve out a career in inclusion?
I think get involved in as many things as you can outside of your job because there are so many opportunities at work, ERGs, there's, whatever initiatives is going on in your workplace, get involved with that, and you'll be surprised at the outcome that it will have, So yeah, just get involved.
Get involved and how enriching it can be, right?
Absolutely. Yeah.
My final question for you. I don't want this to end, but I've loved spending time with you. So my final question is, do you have any words of encouragement or wisdom for anyone out there to help them get to wherever they're going?
Don't forget who you are. This has been key for me, and I don't think we can be hang on, let me rephrase what I'm saying. I don't think that we can get to where we want to be if we're not being authentic in ourselves. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
Yeah.
So stay true to who you are.
Yeah. Yeah.
How do you stay true to who you are?
Um, I think it's about being surrounded by people who've known me for a long, long time. Um, I I have my best friend who I was talking to you about. She's, still a friend. People that I've known since I was 10. I'm a very loyal friend, and these people have known me forever. And um, people that surround me keep me grounded, and
That's
that's
lovely.
important.
Absolutely. Marie-Helene, thank you so much for being a guest on Pause and Rewind. I feel like I've got to know you so much better, and I've loved this.
Me too. It's been such a cool chat. Thank you, Neil.
Thank you for being so open, and I look forward to putting this conversation out there for people. And hopefully, I'll see you soon when you're in London.
Yes, absolutely. I will let you know.
Take care. Bye.
Thanks, Neil. Bye.
Wow, what a conversation. We covered such a lot in such a short space of time. I'm always intrigued to speak to other queer people around representation of LGBTQ lives on screen as we were growing up, particularly with the impact of Section 28 and lack of representation. And yeah, some of those mutual feelings around like resentment and how jealous you can be that you haven't necessarily had the representation that you need. And I love that myself and Marie-Helene both reflected on the Brookside storyline with the characters Beth and Margaret, that lesbian representation on screen and how that brought comfort to Marie-Helene. And I really love that full circle moment of meeting the actress that played Margaret at the Diva Awards this year and being able to tell her the comfort that storyline brought her. I thought that was beautiful. Marie-Helene opened up so vulnerably about her experience of rape with her first girlfriend and how she had to go through that alone. And it was only after many years that she sought support. And as she said and urged people, if you have been a victim of something like that historically, it is never too late to pursue the healing that you deserve and need potentially. And so We will pop a signposting to Gallup, the LGBTQ plus anti-abuse charity. They work with LGBTQ plus victims and survivors of abuse and violence, and they've been doing so for more than 40 years. So if do check in the show notes for those again. Thank you for sharing so vulnerably, and just yeah, you matter, and your healing matters. It's never too late to pursue that. It was great to talk about a shared sense of injustice and how that shapes a lot of Marie-Helene's work. Being described as a happy child, and her mum thought there was something wrong with her because she was so happy. Um, and yeah, hearing the things that bring Marie-Helene joy, making a difference, and her cocoon of love with her dog and her wife, so beautiful to hear. What I also appreciated in this episode is the fact that Marie-Helene went and did some research. When I gave her these questions, she went and spoke to her family about them, and that really touched me. Firstly, as the host of the podcast, but also it really nudged me to maybe do that same thing with my own family with some of these questions. You know, when we talk about what favorite anecdotes, like what was I like when I was little, and I think we don't take time to do that. You know, a lot of the comments on this podcast talk about how we don't often take time to reflect, and this podcast is all about that and getting to know people's stories and the moments, realizations, and relationships that make them who they are today and shape their lives and how they show up in the world. And but also, you know, those conversations can bring people back together. It's something I find really difficult with my dad. And yeah, it's urged me to go and have those conversations. So maybe it will for you too. And I really appreciate that level of effort that Marie-Helene brought to this podcast, that she had those conversations, and you know, it brought up some raw stuff. Her mum's still feeling quite raw about that move from Switzerland to England. So you never know what bonding opportunities and realizations and reframing of some of those memories that those moments, those conversations could bring. Anyway, thank you so much, Marie-Helene, for being such a wonderful guest. Thank you for listening. I always say it, but please do like, subscribe, share. It helps to bring these conversations to people wider than the current audience. And I really want these conversations to get the love and attention they deserve. Thank you so much. Stay tuned for more amazing guests on Pause and Rewind. See you soon. Cheers.